Hey guys, back with another video. Today is really special because I'm out here in the forest and I'm actually recording this with two deer sitting right beside me practically. I've got squirrels running through the trees, there's butterflies flying around. It really does feel magical and God really is so good. I'm just all praises to Him for making this happen. I just cannot believe my life now is just, it's just incredible, an absolute testimony of God's goodness when you make the decision to step out of the darkness and into the light and to trust Him and to follow His will and follow His commands. So just a little plug there for Jesus and His amazingness. Thank you, God. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about triangulation. Initially I was just going to do a video on how to know if you're being manipulated, and I might still do that, but I thought I should talk about one more specific manipulation tactic before I do that, and it's called triangulation. And I wanted to talk about it because I'm sure many of you know what triangulation is, and I'm sure many of you understand kind of how the narcissist or the evil person would use it against you in order to have what's known as kind of their flying monkeys or their enablers to come out of the woodworks and try and manipulate you for the narcissist. But I also just want to take the approach of making sure that you yourself are not falling into the trap of being an enabler or a flying monkey for somebody in your life. And this could be a spouse, it could be a sibling, it could be a friend, it could be a coworker. If you are interjecting into another relationship on behalf of somebody else, there's a very good chance that you are being used by someone to manipulate another person. So keep that in mind. There is a difference between helping somebody and listening to somebody's problem and being asked to go to another person and speak to them about another person on their behalf, okay? Whenever somebody comes to you and wants you to speak to another person for them, you have to ask yourself why, okay? This is not the time to project. So again, if you haven't watched that video, you can go back, but projection is essentially taking your good nature and putting it on somebody else. Do not do that in these situations. Don't say to yourself, oh, well, they're probably, just don't want to bother that person or upset them or, fill in the blanks, and you try and justify. Ask that person why. Be very specific, okay? Ask questions. If somebody says, would you be able to call so-and-so and make sure they're okay? Ask them, why can't you call them yourself? And really listen to the reason why, okay? If the person is like, oh, I'm afraid to call them, why are you afraid to call them? Like, what happened? What did you do? And don't be afraid to ask the person, what did you do? My last video, when we were talking about gaslighting, remember I shared with you that somebody who believes that they're perfect and never makes mistakes and doesn't sin and hasn't done something wrong, that person is living in the Antichrist spirit. That person is either a narcissistic person, has NPD, or is on maybe on the spectrum or has traits at least. But all of us have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And if you can't admit that to yourself, then that's a red flag. That means that you're probably on the spectrum, on the evil side of things, not the good side of things. So if you say like, well, what did you do? What happened? And the person's like, what did I do? What makes you think I did something? All red flags. Then I would just say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable calling that person for you. And that's a completely acceptable response too, right? It doesn't matter who it is. If your spouse is like, can you please call Bobby for me and let him know that like I'm sorry? Well, why can't you call him and say you're sorry? Because the people of the lie, right? The evil people, the narcissistic people will lie about the other person. Please understand that. So they'll say things like, oh, well, I can't call them and tell them I'm sorry because they'll get mad at me and yell at me, or they don't want to hear from me. they will lie so that they won't have to apologize. These people don't want to admit that they've done anything wrong. What they want is for you to call and for you to say that they're sorry, so that you'll let them back into their life without them having to say they're sorry. And then they'll be able to say, I did say I'm sorry. Remember, Bob, Uncle, whatever called you and said that I was sorry, but they never said they were sorry. So please keep that in mind. They lie, they lie, they lie. That's why they're called the people of the lie, okay? So, if the person says, oh, well, will you call them and tell them I'm sorry? Well, why can't you call them and call them and leave a message? And if that person doesn't want to talk to you, it's their right not to talk to you. The amount of people who have injected themselves into my life on behalf of other people is shocking, really, and disappointing, super disappointing. The amount of people who believed the lie about me instead of having some type of common sense and some type of red flag that would be like, yeah, it doesn't sound like Carmen. Like, what? Like, she just didn't call back or didn't respond to you or just kind of ghosted you for no reason. Like, that doesn't sound like her. Like, the amount of people who didn't do that is shocking for me. But again, it tells me about them, which is, disappointing, but still it gives me at least more clarity about, who people are and who I can trust. But I really want to help you today not be one of those people, okay? To not be one of those people who will just believe anything that they hear. This is really the big problem that happened that caused mankind to fall is Adam and Eve. They lived with God, they knew God, and they had existed with him, they talked to him, they walked with him. He had shared the creation with them. He had made all of this for them, and then it just took one person, the serpent, it took Satan to come into the garden and to just put doubt into Eve's mind. That's essentially what happened, is the serpent said to Eve, did God really say that? Did he really say that you would die? I don't think that you'll die. And you know why he did that? It's because he doesn't want you to know the knowledge. He doesn't want you to know the truth. He doesn't want you to know what he knows, because then God knows that you'll be just like him, and he's trying to keep that from you. And here's what's so interesting about what happened in the story of Adam and Eve and the serpent, and what often happens with the narcissist and the enabler and the person, who is being lied about, is that rather than questioning the random person who just comes out of nowhere, Satan, rather than Eve being like, who are you to talk about God like that? Do you know God? That doesn't sound like God at all. He made all of this for me. He's been taking care of me. He talks to me every day. He walks with me every day. He has given me everything except for one tree. What have you done for me lately? Thank you very much. And why are you talking smack about God, who I love? That's not what Eve said. That's not at all what Eve said. Eve was like, yeah, all right, I'm going to eat that apple. Unbelievable how it just took one person to lie about God, and she totally believed him. And this is what's true of so many enablers and flying monkeys. And so I want you to really ask yourself, have you done that before? Has somebody called you or come up to you and told you a lie about somebody else that you just believed, even though it was completely against what you knew about that person or how that person normally is or how they are with you, and you just accepted it from somebody who you don't even know. You chose somebody who you don't know over somebody who you've had a relationship for a long time. I mean, that's like a different level of evil, and you have to admit that in yourself if you've done that. That was an evil thing that Eve did. She did not have God's back, first of all, right? Like, she had an opportunity in that moment to say, like I said, like, who are you to talk about my God like that? I don't think so. Get out of here. Who even let you into this garden? I'm going to tell God. I'm going to talk to God about it. That is not at all what happened, right? And that's what should have happened. And so I hope that this video, if nothing else, will make you think twice before you believe just something that you hear about another person without looking into it. I mean, the truth can withstand scrutiny. You can search for, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, God is not opposed to you looking into things, right? Like, the truth will stand the test of time. There's nothing wrong with doubt, like when the doubting Thomas, right? Like, nobody, there's nothing wrong with Thomas who had doubt. God didn't cast him away because he knows that if you doubt, but as long as you still move forward to find the answers, that the truth will stand the test of time. And so anyone who is standing in truth, you can continue to ask them questions and they won't get upset and the story won't change, and they'll continue to answer your questions until you feel satisfied. The liar cannot stand the test of time. The liar will constantly will project, will deflect, will deny, will get angry, will tell you that you're opinionated or you have a problem or there's something wrong with you, or all sorts of crazy name calling, really. They'll mock you, they'll name call you, they'll do all sorts of silly things. But that's also a way that you can know whether or not the person is telling the truth. So all that to say is, like, the next time somebody tries to get information from you about another person, ask yourself why, and be aware of, like, why people call you. If somebody calls you out of the blue and you don't really know them, or you haven't spoken to them in a long time, and all of a sudden they're interested in you, ask yourself why, especially if you know that they know somebody who is a narcissist. They're probably being used. And also, pay attention to when they bring up another person, right? If they're like, so whatever happened with you and so, ask that person, why? Why are you asking me? Why are you asking me about them? And be the type of person who doesn't talk about people behind their back, okay? That should go without saying, but not in this world. I mean, the amount of people who don't do this, gossip is evil, okay? Talking about other people behind their back is evil. It doesn't matter whether or not you think you're saying good things or not. You should have your own life that you can talk about yourself. No, there's a difference between sharing your life with people and other people being involved in the story. So for example, if I'm telling somebody about a trip that I went on with my husband, then Mark will be in the story because he was there with me. But the point of the story is for me to share about my vacation and the people who are with me. It's very different than me telling you about Mark's vacation that he went on without me. That's none of my business, and it's not my story to tell. It's his story to tell. And that's another thing you can tell with people who are evil, people of the lie. They will spend all of their time talking about other people. That's all they do. They have no life of their own. And so all they can do is share stories about other people. And it's sad, but it's also evil, and it's not okay. And so don't be in an environment where you're listening to other people talk about other people. Be the person in the room who's like, I don't feel comfortable with this, and walk away. If you have coworkers and you're all in the lunchroom or around the water cooler, and they start to talk about, Betty at the reception desk, and Be the person who is big enough to be like, you know what, guys, I don't feel comfortable talking about Betty when she's not here. And if they're like, oh, they make their own little mock, which they will, because people are children, then just be like, okay, well, I don't feel comfortable, so I'm just going to leave and walk away. Look, you will probably be the new person that they talk about, but so what? Like, at least you're not like them. At least you're not evil like them. At least you're standing for what's right and what's true. And the thing is, if more people did that, we wouldn't be in a situation where everyone thinks it's okay to gossip and talk about other people and mock other people. Because unfortunately, most people don't have a backbone, and they'll just allow people to do whatever they want. So, I mean, I guess today, I hope you're not those people. And I hope that if you are those people, that maybe this video will make you try to be someone better in the future. Maybe you'll be somebody who doesn't sit around talking about other people when they're not there. Maybe you'll be the type of person who stands up for somebody, you know, that when somebody says, oh, you wouldn't believe what so-and-so did, that you would have the decency to say, really? That's not like that person. Like, that's not how I know that person. I've always known them to be kind and considerate. Like, did you do something? Did something happen? Instead of just believing every single thing that someone says, like, or when somebody is talking about a family member or a friend of yours, and they're not there, you'll stand up for them and be like, hey, it's not cool. Like the water cooler thing. Hey, I don't feel comfortable with you talking about so-and-so behind their back. It's not okay. I don't like what you're saying about that person. It's not okay. And understand that that they're not going to respond favorably to you, but who cares, you know? And it'll be hard the first time, the second time, third time, maybe the fourth time. But eventually you'll stop caring what bullies think. Eventually you'll stop caring what the evil person thinks. And what your focus will be on, well, what does God think? You know, what is God thinking? Because so many people think they're getting away with stuff, and they're not. God sees everything, and at the end of your life, you will be judged. If you have not been forgiven, you will be judged. Every thought you ever had, every word you ever said, every act you ever did that you think was in darkness and no one knew about, God sees. And at the end of your life, I'm certain there'll be a giant projection like where I am right here in the amphitheater. And your whole life will come in plain view, and you will not be able to hide it any longer. You cannot hide who you are from God. Okay? You can't hide it. And that's a warning to you, okay? To stop acting like you're something that you're not. Start being honest and start operating as though God is watching you, because He is, okay? If you call yourself a child of God, you should be most concerned about what God thinks and how you measure up in the kingdom, okay? You should be asking yourself, is God proud of me? And what would Jesus do if He was here and people were like talking bad about somebody, you know? Jesus stood up for the woman who made a mistake. Yeah, she was an adulterer. Yeah, she cheated on her husband. And everyone wanted to stone her, even though they all were probably little perverts in the background too. And Jesus said, you know, okay, well, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. So which one of you is perfect? Which one of you hasn't made a mistake? You can throw the first stone. And they all just dropped their stones and walked away. Why? Because we all suck. That's the message. We all fall short of the glory of God. We all need work. We all make mistakes. And it's so much easier to just admit that than to constantly be trying to gaslight and change the world and make reality shift in your favor and project things on other people. Gosh, that's a lot of work. You know, it is so much easier. You know, when Jesus says that His yoke is light, He's right. There is a peace when you walk with God, and it's not difficult. God tells you how to act and how to be and what's acceptable, and it's not hard to do those things. I mean, it's difficult in a sense that like the world will mock you and say not nice things about you. But again, if you can get to a point where you stop caring about what evil people think and you start caring about what God thinks mostly, all that stuff kind of goes away, right? So I guess my point of the whole story is don't be like Eve, okay? Don't just assume when some stranger or some person that you knew from the past or someone who you barely know comes out of the woodwork and starts talking smack about somebody you know deeply. Don't just believe what they say without looking into it more. And if you really know who that person is, then have the backbone to be like, I don't know why you think you can come all up in here and talk smack about my friend or my family or my God. You can't. So there's the door. Later. And if you want to come back and be respectful, I'll be here. But otherwise, yeah, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So that's today's message. Be strong, be brave, pay attention to how you're acting. Be very, very aware of what people are asking you to do and what they're saying. And more than anything, pay the most attention and be the most concerned about what God says is right and good and what God thinks of you. Okay? I love you so very much. I absolutely pray for the blessings of God over your life. I pray for His presence to be in your life. I pray that you will have an encounter with the one true living God. I pray that you will be saved. I pray that you will choose the kingdom of heaven over the things of this world. In Jesus' name, amen, friends. Bye. God bless. In a video, and there are deer right. I'm going to try and zoom in. They're just like sitting there. It's so magical. He's chewing. So cool.